Okay, finally got on here. I'm hoping this stream is gonna work this evening. We've been having bad luck lately, and the weather here is not cooperating. The signal sometimes doesn't get through, so we'll give it a try anyway. Let me know if right now if the stream seems good to you from your end. Put something in the chat whether it's audio and video or getting through. Nobody's saying anything. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. We'll see it. Okay. All right. So we'll some lag. Yeah. Very often, for some reason, with these YouTube streams, it takes a few minutes before the video and audio get in sync. I'm not sure why that is. Okay, we'll go. We'll proceed ahead and just hope for the best. So I'm not starting a series this week. I'm going to do a one-off, talking about one of the core philosophical foundations of the whole Buddhist philosophy, and that is the concept of causality. That is cause and effect. This is phrased otherwise. This is the dependently arisen nature of all phenomena. It's the basic principle of dependent origination, paticca samuppada. This arises because of that. This ceases because that ceases. Put like this, it almost seems too trivial to state, but it's actually very foundational, and the Buddha was definitely laying out a position in the field of Indian metaphysics to take a stand on causality. And one of the there are many applications of this, but one of them is in the principle of right view, sammaditthi. We have in the Brahmajala Sutta, as well known, 62 wrong views listed and described, but these can be simplified. And in other places in the Pali Canon, when the Buddha talks about right and wrong view, he very often talks about two principal wrong views, and all of the 62, or almost all of the 62, can be reduced to these two wrong views. That is Uccedavada and Sasatavada. And he said that his view took its stand on the middle way between them, the middle path of dependent origination. So this is also an application of the idea of middle path applied to view. The Sasatavada, or the eternalist view, is the view that there is a permanent abiding essence in a person, that in the Indian terminology, the Atman, or Pali Atta. This was a very probably the predominant position in India before the time of the Buddha. And the Sasatavada view usually goes along with the idea of a creator God. It becomes part of the complete package, that God created these the universe, and he imbued these Atman with consciousness. The other extreme view is the Uchedavada, literally means the cutting off or terminating view. And this is what in modern parlance we would call materialism, or perhaps physicalism, the idea that human beings are nothing more than machines made out of meat. And in the language of the Brahmajala Sutta, when somebody, the Uchedavadan believes that often historically they've played out as opponents in the world. A modern iteration of this would be, say, the debate between the creationists and the evolutionists. But in various forms, this dichotomy between eternalists and materialists has persisted. And it can be overlooked that there is a third position. There's the Buddhist middle path. And it is based philosophically and takes a stand separate from the other two on this very principle of causality. Because although the two wrong views or extreme views seem to be generally opposite, and in many ways they are, from the Buddhist perspective, they both share the same fundamental error that invalidates their system, which is that they deny causality at some point. They fall back on either randomness or arbitrariness. In the case of the eternalist, ultimately everything has to be based on the arbitrary will of the creator. In Western philosophy, that pre-Christian, there was already this idea of the first cause, the idea there had to be a first cause. Whereas in Buddhism, no, there is no first cause. Nothing exists without a cause and condition. So there isn't an uncaused creator that makes everything else, because then he would be uncaused and would violate by his existence, he would violate the law of causality. And his decisions about how the universe is ordered are arbitrary. They're not subject to any law. In the case of the materialist or Uchedavadan, the ultimate fallback is to randomness. Things are the way they are just because that's the way they are. There's no metaphysical reason why things are the way they are. It's just that's it. So they're always in a materialist system. There always has to be an element of randomness. This can be illustrated, I think, in terms of the birth of beings. When a human being, say, comes to birth, he or she is born with a set of characteristics that are present already at conception, which we can call, a large part of that, at least, that we recognize in modern science comes from genetics. And, this determines everything from the sex of the person to their physical health and so on. Now, if you're taking the materialist view, we understand enough about genetics that we can explain a lot of the process of how it works. Somebody is born with a mutation and there's something wrong with them. The materialists would say, well, there was some damage to the chromosome in the first stages of development, perhaps by a random particle. But that's falling back onto randomness. There's no explanation of why. Somebody is born with a birth defect of some kind, say a Down syndrome or one of these genetic defects. Materialists can talk about the mechanism behind that, but he can't say why this being and not that being, which is to the materialist, that's even kind of a meaningless question. But to the Buddhist, would say that there had to be a prior cause to cause a person to be born either sound and healthy or with some disability, and that prior cause comes from past lives, comes from karma. So there's no escaping from the iron law of causality. If we develop this idea further, the idea that everything must arise from causality, nothing is random or by chance, and nothing comes from nothing. Everything arises from past causes and conditions. Then this is a principal argument or underpinning of the idea of repeated rebirth, because the argument goes as like this: that for each moment of consciousness in your life, there are multiple causes, but one of the principal causes is the previous moment of consciousness in an unbroken chain. And the first moment of consciousness that the Buddhist system says occurs immediately at conception, the first moment of consciousness arising in a new continuum cannot arise out of nothing. There had to be a previous cause for that. And the only possible way of finding a previous cause for a new being's consciousness is to postulate that this stream of consciousness pre-existed the being, and there were previous lifetimes. Extended outwards in time further, it also underpins the whole idea of the beginninglessness of samsara. Now, this is a concept that the Buddha himself didn't refuse to comment on when asked about whether the universe is eternal or finite, and whether a first beginning can be ascertained. He always refused to answer. He said the beginning of samsara cannot be known or cannot be ascertained. He refused to answer one way or the other. But this refusal of the Buddha did not dissuade the commentators from weighing in later times. And Buddhaghosa, the great commentator who wrote the Visuddhimagga and most of the Atthakatha, he definitively said that samsara is without beginning. And logically, it has to follow from the idea of causality, because there could not ever be a first moment, because that would be uncaused. For each moment in time that you can define, let's say moment x0, there had to be at x0 minus 1. There had to be a prior moment to cause the moment we're talking about. So you can go back in time endlessly and never find a beginning. Here's the little friend here. So where was I? Got distracted. The principle of causality brooks no exception. except for, we could say, a nibbana is neither cause nor condition. But this is outside of samsara, outside of conditioned existence. In fact, we use that terminology of sankata and asankata, conditioned and unconditioned, as a way of speaking about samsara and nibbana. Samsara is conditioned, and nibbana is unconditioned. There are a couple of schemes that are found in the texts detailing particulars of the law of causality. And we have the Paticca Samuppada that deals with the how this whole mass of suffering comes to be, the 12 nidanas, which is a application of the law of causality to the specific case of a sentient being. But we have some more general approaches. The most detailed and complex is found in the Patana, which is a book of the Abhidhamma, and I'm not even sure if it's ever been fully translated into English. It's an enormous book. In print, it's like, I think, 7 volumes of dealing with the 24 pachaya. That means the conditions. These are particular mechanisms by which causality works. You can find a summary, a good summary of this teaching in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation of the Abhidhamma Sangaha, Comprehensive Manual of Abhidhamma. There's a chapter on the 24 conditions of the Patana. Some of them are classed as pre-nascent, some are co-nascent, and some are post-nascent, meaning the pre-existing, existing simultaneously, or existing afterwards as a support. So something that causes something else to arise after it is a pre-nascent condition. Something that supports something else in existence together is co-nascent, and something that makes something flourish after it's already arisen is a post-nascent. An example is given of rain causing a seed to sprout. The seed is pre-existing, but then a post-existing cause, the rain, adds to the picture. A lot of the detail of this is based on the broader Abhidhamma system of Chittavritti, the mental dhammas succeeding one another in an active cognition. So it's all part of the Abhidhamma system, and the idea in Abhidhamma, the underlying idea of Abhidhamma is that the fundamental units of existence are dhammas. And a dhamma, one English translation of a dhamma that I've seen used that I think is quite good is point instant. It's this kind of atomic idea that there's this momentary occurrence, that reality only occurs in a momentary way. And dhammas succeed one another by laws, these laws of causation in groups. So some dhammas exist together, like chitta and various chittasakas, mind and mind objects, or mind and body. There are physical dhammas and mental dhammas, and they all follow these laws. Um, another somewhat more approachable or simpler scheme dealing with causality talks about it in terms of the 5 laws or 5 niyamas, that there are these kind of broad laws. And this is another way of expressing the idea of causality, that things are lawful, that the universe doesn't proceed in a random manner, but follows defined laws that can be found. So this is a very kind of scientific attitude. And the 5 niyamas are utu, bija, kamma, dhamma, and citta. Utu niyama, utu means literally heat or temperature, and this would be the laws of things like chemical transformation, like the climate, things that are energetic. They fall under utu niyama. Bija niyama, bija is literally seed, and this we would call in modern terms genetics. It's the set of laws that determine the physical inheritance of a being from their parents. Chitta niyama are the laws of the mind. The mental objects and the chitta, the knowing mind, follow a set of laws, so that there is mind and there's matter, and they're quite separate, but mind is not something outside the realm of causality either. So the procedures or the algorithms that govern the operation of the mind fall under Chitta Niyama. Kamma Niyama is the law of kamma, that there's a cause and effect for the conscious intentional acts of beings. And I want to talk a bit more about that, but I'll just mention the last one is the broadest category, Dhamma Niyama, which means something like laws of nature. Dhamma in this context is not Dhamma as a teaching, but Dhamma as reality. So it's the kind of a catch-all category, like see the laws of nature. So the final angle for this talk that I'd like to address is the role of kamma, because on a practical level of our life and our being, our practice, our things we say and do in this life, kamma has a real practical application. Whereas if we're talking about the laws of physics or the laws of genetics and so on, they can be interesting theoretically, but they don't really have such a direct application. And the idea of kamma is also very important in terms of right view. In the formula for right view that's found several places in the canon, that is sometimes called the mundane right view because it deals with the operations of conditioned world, kamma is front and foremost. There are results of good and evil deeds, is the formula. So it's a very complex topic, kamma. First thing I'd like to clarify, because we're talking about causality as the main theme here, is the role of kamma as a causal agent, and address there's a statement by the Buddha that not everything is kamma. well, actually, the way it was phrased is he was criticizing a wrong view of someone else who said that everything is kamma. On the other hand, we have that statement, but on the other hand, when mind states are explained in the Abhidhamma, every sense experience, whether it's eye, ear, nose, tongue, etc., everything that we experience by sense is classed as kamma resultant. So it has kamma as one of its causal factors. So that seems pretty all-inclusive. But we have to understand the Buddha's teaching here I would say there's two aspects to this. One is that the Buddha was specifically refuting a deterministic view, because the Buddha's teaching and understanding of kamma is that it is volition. There is an intention. This in the Abhidhamma, this occurs in the jhana moments, that there is an impulsion, there's an active phase in consciousness that has at least the potential to operate. Speaking loosely, we could say this is the occurrence of free will. I'm a little reluctant to use that phrase because free will, although it's a huge debate in Western philosophy, it sort of doesn't apply in Buddhism, because Buddhism doesn't postulate a self to have a will. There is a volition, but there's no being, there's no essence, there's no person that is producing that will. So it's kind of redundant to ask whether a person has free will or not. There's a chain of cause and effect, and there's no randomness, but there is a freedom. There is in the jhana moment, the mind can operate through intention, cetana, and make an action. In the dependent origination, volitional formations is the second nidana after ignorance. Because of ignorance, volitional formations. It's because we're operating without full knowledge. We're kind of stumbling in the dark. We disturb the universe. And this, I think, is how to understand kamma. The Arahant makes no kamma because he's not operating from ignorance. But for the rest of us, every action we take with body, speech, and mind has some effect on the universe. And I would say it's one of the principal underlying laws of reality. Would probably fall under Dhamma niyama, that the universe always balances itself. We have this in physics quite often, that for every force there's an anti-force, and everything always tends to zero itself in the end. So whenever you take an action by body, speech, or mind, you're sending out a little ripple into the universe, and eventually the universe rebalances itself, and you experience that as resultant. So this is kamma vipaka, resultant, which is experienced in the external world. So we experience it as sense objects. There's also another way of understanding that not everything is a cause of kamma is not the sole cause of everything, because it's a principle of Abhidhamma that nothing arises without a cause, but also nothing arises from a single cause. There's always multiple causes for everything. And this is where the 5 niyamas come in. There is a kamma that we make that will cause a certain result, but the purely external niyamas have to cooperate for that sense experience to occur. A kind of trivial example would be, say you observe a beautiful sunset and it causes you a feeling of sukha vedana, happy feeling. You're seeing a beautiful sunset. It was your kamma, some good karma that you made in the past that allowed you to witness the sunset, but it didn't cause the sunset. The sunset is caused by the movement of the earth in relation to the sun and atmospheric conditions. So dhamma niyama and utu niyama, and nothing to do whatsoever with your karma, except that you happen to be at that place at that time, which allowed you to have that experience. So when we understand this, the workings of the law of karma to whatever degree we can, and we can never understand it fully. This is something else the Buddha said that's beyond the comprehension of an ordinary person to fully understand karma. But we can understand it in broad brush principles. And we can make an effort to guide our life by that and create wholesome karma for ourselves so that we experience good conditions in the future. So I think I'll stop there. I've covered a few different angles of this law of causality. I see the chat's been very busy. I make an effort not to look at it while I'm talking because I lose my train of thought, but I'll go to it now and see what questions we have. Okay, in Samyutta 54:6, the Buddha asked the monk Arita how he develops the mindfulness of breathing. He answers, I've given up desire for sensual pleasures of past and future. I have illuminated perception of repulsion regarding phenomena, internal and external. Just mindful I breathe in, mindful I breathe out. That's why I develop mindfulness of breathing. The Buddha responds, this is mindfulness of breathing. I don't deny it, but as to how mindfulness of breathing is fulfilled in detail, listen and apply your mind well. I will speak, and then he goes on to teach the 16 steps of breathing. Based on that, what was Arita missing? I think what he was missing in this context was a more methodical approach to developing jhana. Next question. After experiencing the signless or wishless, and with convergence with the process by fully seeing and knowing the arising and cessations, is there anything more to do? And no, there's really nothing more needs to be done. Just allow the process. What about the existence of samsara? What would the prior cause for that be? That would be one of the unanswerable questions, because samsara is indeed without beginning. So that there's no temporal first point of samsara. And even to ask the question of the prior cause of the whole of samsara is meaningless. But let's say on a atemporal or outside of time perspective, the cause of samsara is ultimately ignorance. Oh, hello, Dhammavaro. I'm glad you could make it. How do you know whether kamma of past life has been in your present life? Well, it's always present. I mean, to begin with, the particular situation of your birth. What kind of family were you born into? What gender are you? How is your physical health? All these are determined by past karma. And you can see, I think, on some particulars, that one thing that I think often happens is, and I've known lots of cases of this. People will have some kind of a emotional attachment or great interest in some culture, some antique or foreign culture. Somebody might have been born and raised in northern Ontario, and they're fascinated with Japanese samurai culture. Where does that come from? Next one. 10 years ago, I thought I had an original thought that there is no existence or non-existence, but I suspect someone must have stumbled on the idea before. I discovered the power of observing closely how thoughts arise, and then I stumbled on Nagarjuna and Chan and early Buddhism and realized there's nothing new under the sun. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's very hard to come up with a completely original thought, actually. I would agree with that. I don't know if it's even possible. Ajahn, theoretically, if all beings in samsara become arahants, then would samsara end? That's a hypothesis that will never occur. Ajahn Chah's answer to this problem was to say that's like an earthworm worried about running out of dirt. In Buddhist cosmology, should the four elements in material world be understood as the bodies of the Brahma gods? Do we inhabit their bodies like bacteria inhabit ours? No, that's not part of Buddhist cosmology at all. And that is somewhat. There is a similar idea to that in Jain cosmology. They see the universe as a vast being, and we inhabit this being, and we try to rise up to the highest levels. Like lower forms of life would be like in the feet, and then human beings may be in the chest or belly, and then the gods are up in the head. Does the mind and mind objects exist in another dimension or frequency to the physical body or world made of four elements? I'm not really fond of that. I know that, yeah, I know where you're coming from, and there may be some way of expressing it like that, but I really don't like that, because the idea of frequency is something that particularly relates to this physical world. It's part of the rupa kanda. Energy, electromagnetic energy has frequency, but electromagnetic energy is part of the material plane of reality. So if we're using frequency in a more looser sense, then yeah, you could possibly say that. But I try to avoid that terminology. It may be because I have an electrical background and I'm kind of fixated maybe on the technical definition of frequency. Can't free will be described as the ability to create new bija? If not, then new kamma is impossible. One will only be able to draw from pre-existing good and evil bija. You're using bija, I guess, meaning seeds, like karmic seeds. I would say that's you're posing a dilemma here that I think was it of concern, I think, to some of the early Buddhists, and I believe it may be the the basis for the Mahayana idea of a Tathagata Garbha, the womb or seed of Buddhahood, that there has to be something. Why would any being ever emerge into enlightenment if there wasn't some seed for that? This is probably, a more general answer to that. This would be one of the reasons the Buddha said we can never fully understand kamma. But there is in the Abhidhamma system, there is these free moments that are called javana, that it is possible for the mental factor of intention to impel a new direction. I can see the argument that this would not be possible if there wasn't some prior existent cause, perhaps in the distant past. But then there's also the idea that samsara is without beginning. So in the beginningless time, we've probably done and experienced everything, and except for arahantship, where we wouldn't be coming back again. So there's an infinitude of seeds to draw upon. Venerable Sir, does the separate consciousness streams come together as one? Is the differentiation an illusion? That's not the position of Theravada, that the consciousness streams are seen as remaining separate. I know in some other Buddhist traditions, there is an idea that they can merge and bifurcate. This is, again, it's kind of a mysterious thing. The idea of the differentiation being an illusion, this was the position of the Upanishads, that there is only really one consciousness. And I think maybe in some way we could say that there's some validity to that. Consciousness is just consciousness. But the practical experience of streams of consciousness does seem to be quite individual. What about the Jain tradition that is non-theistic and non-materialistic? Where does causality break there? If there's no self, then is it possible to say why this being and not that being? No, it's two questions. So the one about the Jains, the Jain philosophy is somewhat close to Buddhism in many ways, and different in others. And I think you're right, it's non-theistic and non-materialist. I think they don't really deny causality, but I think the position of the Buddha was that they misapplied it or misunderstood it. An example would be their understanding of kamma, whereas the Buddhist position is that kamma is only made in the mind. So that is, there has to be an intention. The Jains see it in a more materialistic way, in that something that's done with the body, like accidentally stepping on an insect, is a karma of killing. And they actually talk about kamma in a materialist way as adhering to the soul. They do hold that the beings have a soul, a jiva, so then they would be falling into the eternalist view. So their view from the Buddhist definition, that their view is not complete, or not has some elements of materialism and some elements of theism finding its way in there. Take a couple more. Philosophy is increasingly concluding we do not have free will. The Buddha emphasized intention. Do you think that the no free will is consistent with Buddhism? No, I don't. But I think that the Western understanding of free will is based on the idea of an existent self. So without an existent self, the problem becomes rephrased. It's not the same thing at all. So I think there is a freedom in intention. Okay. You mentioned that samsara is a condition and nibbana is unconditioned, but isn't nibbana falls away anyway under condition because it's just the other side of samsara? Everything is dual, right? Both on the same stick, just different sides, opposite sides. Um, well, that's not there. There's that's close to I think some Mahayana teachings that there's no difference between samsara and nirvana in essence, but Theravada makes a very clear distinction between them. There is the conditioned and there's the unconditioned, and there's no condition for nibbana. And we can't even. I was going to say it just is, but we can't really say it is or it isn't. It's completely outside of all our understanding and laws. Okay. Would an arahant? Let's probably be the last one. Uh, Would an arahant approve of having bodyguards with lethal weapons to fend off hostile beings? No, I don't think an arahant would ever do that. Okay. Thank you. I'm thankful to all of you for attending, and I'm thankful to the Dewas of the sky for allowing the internet signal to hold up this time. And we'll see you next week.